is on.
Good afternoon and welcome to another National Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 weekly briefing for the 24th of March 2021. I am Les Roy Williams. Thank you very much for joining us for this briefing as we continue to update you on what is happening in St. Kitts and Nevis in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. We continue to appeal to you to adhere to all the safety and security protocols that have been put in place, which are crucial in terms of the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are at the stage of vaccinations, and of course, we continue as well to encourage you, not to force you, but to encourage you and to educate you in terms of the need to be vaccinated. The vaccine does not do anyone any harm. It is just there to as a protective measure for the people of the country. I want to invite first to speak to us the President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. She has been here several times and she is very involved in terms of the management, part of the management of the COVID-19 pandemic here in the Federation. I invite Mrs. Giselle Matthews to address us.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, Mr. Samuel, Dr. Laws, CMO, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, Mr. Cromwell Henry, Sergeant Cromwell Henry, and I see we have with us the Honorable Wendy Phipps. Good afternoon to all, and thank you for having me. It's been several months since I think I've been on the podium, but in speaking to Mr. Samuel recently, I felt compelled that I share in this great news that we have a vaccine on island. And I felt that it's the responsibility of me as the Chamber's President and representing the business community, those members and those non-members and small businesses and just in general, anyone who's functioning and operating in any sort of business on St. Kitts and Nevis, that it's important that I stand here and tell you I've been vaccinated and I'm fine. And so are several and many of our board, and most and possibly all. I haven't done a full audit until we probably meet tomorrow at our regular meeting. But to say that we are very privileged in St. Kitts for many reasons. One is that we have remained, protected for the past year from COVID in the sense that we've had cases, but we've had no deaths. Limited hospitalizations, and so I think it's important that we stay on that trajectory and we not risk all of the, I don't want to say luck because the doctors have been doing great work to keep us safe and the science have done so and the decision making, but sometimes if you play with your blessings you could lose them, and I feel that it's important to say this. I think a lot of people in the public, and this is from speaking to persons and getting feedback, that possibly because we have been so protected and we haven't had to really live with so many of the other restrictions and, even curfews that many of our neighboring islands and sister islands nearby as Antigua and Barbados, St. Lucia, are still living with in terms of closures and not able to function as a society and live as normal as we are here. we might be taking it for granted and saying, well, I don't need to take the vaccine. Well, that's even more why you need to take the vaccine, because if you want to continue to live the life that you've been living in terms of your freedoms, it's critical that you see it as you want to keep it that way, and you want to continue functioning like that and be able to open. And so I don't have any formal presentation to give you, but it's really to appeal to those in the business community, appeal to those employers. We've sent out email, we've sent out information on our site, our Facebook page, appealing to you to allow time for your employees, your team members, your associates, your colleagues, to have time to go and get vaccinated. Some of the clinics are open on Saturdays to allow those in an industry that may not be as flexible, that you can go on a Saturday, rest on a Sunday. Those businesses that are small enough who can be a bit more accommodating and more flexible, we ask that you give that time to vaccinate. I want to share some information with you in terms of some data, because I think it's important, and I think that's what people sometimes relate to. But if we really want to open up, this is the route that we are going to have to look to go. And I would read you something, not too long, but I will try to be quick. But it's by Sir Ronald Sanders, the ambassador of Antigua and Barbuda to the United States and the OAS. And he says in an article recently in February the 18th, people in the Caribbean who refuse to take vaccinations to counter the coronavirus will cause the COVID-19 pandemic to remain longer in the region, endangering lives, livelihoods, and entire economies. Whatever genuine fears may exist, these people must be educated about the value of the vaccine to their own health, and they must be encouraged by all influential agencies to take it. If they need convincing, they should look at the experience of other countries where more than 139 million people have taken the vaccine and not one of them to date had died. The churches whose leaders have been preaching against vaccinations are doing neither their followers nor their countries any good. Similarly, the representatives of trade unions who argue that their members have the right not to take vaccines might consider enlightening them about the benefits of their vaccine or their individual well-being, their families, the wider community, and the businesses from which they derive a living. At the rate at which vaccines are currently available and being rolled out in the world, the Caribbean will be behind Britain, the US, in controlling the virus by at least 1 year. If a significant number of people remain unvaccinated, the delay would even be longer. Caribbean countries cannot afford a year, let alone a more extended period, to suppress the virus. Many economies are already in dire straits. Poverty is expanding, unemployment is rising, economies are declining. Hospitals in some countries are besieged, and many more people are dying. This is why a meeting of the Permanent Council of the OAS of the American states on February 17th, all independent countries joined in promoting the adoption of a resolution calling for equitable distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines. Action is necessary to get vaccines into Caribbean countries so that at least 80% of the people can be inoculated to build herd immunity. In St. Kitts, with our population, I think we're aiming at 70%. This can only be achieved when a large part of the population is immune to the disease. If enough people are resistant to the coronavirus, it will have nowhere to go and it will eventually peter out. I thought I'd share that because I think we need to put things in perspective. It's been 1 year this month since we closed our borders to the pandemic, March of 2020. Then we reopened in October partially with restrictions and a 14-day quarantine. We're talking 5 months ago, and we're here. Many of you cannot even afford to feed your families. Many of you in the tourism sector directly, thousands of you are employed in that area. Taxi drivers, we have close to 500. If you don't vaccinate, your business can't restart. We can't reignite. We cannot get the economy going. If you don't vaccinate, the CMO and Dr. Cameron Wilkinson and the powers that be are not going to give the go to reopen this economy. And 85% of our tourists that land on St. Kitts are off of cruise ships. 85%. We are not like some of the other islands where it's the flip, where they have multiple stay-over hotels. We have significant name brands, and we're very privileged to have those hotels on island. However, they do not account for the vast revenue raised by the economy. And so with that, the government's revenue is down significantly. I don't have an exact figure, but I believe I think it's 30% lower than revenue collected in 2019, and 18.5% tax revenue, likely significant from the sector that pays into tax from the tourism sector. It means SCASPA, it means every segment of this economy is hurting and hemorrhaging. And I don't believe we can continue to do that for much longer. So I just hate to say, please, don't be selfish. If you're a young person, don't think that you don't need to vaccinate because you have a mother, a father, grandmother, an aunt, and maybe an older person among you. You work in that sector, you go home and you're on the front lines and you spread it to your family. Don't let your luck run out. I'm basically here to appeal to ask you to turn up, vaccinate. If we roll up our sleeves and we reduce the quarantine, then we can reopen the economy and reignite the commerce and move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Matthews, and additionally we thank the Honorable Wendy C. Phipps. I think her middle name is C. I think it's for Colleen. Wendy Colleen Phipps, and she has been a bulwark of support here at the NEOC with respect to the COVID-19 and its management. Always here. And we thank you, Mrs. Matthews, for that very important address that you gave, because it's not about our selfishness, it's about the common good. And I do know that a lot of the churches are in support of taking the vaccine. For example, the Catholic Church, the Bishop of the Diocese of St. John's Bastille, Bishop Robert Yanos, put out a very powerful statement to all the faithful in the diocese that they have a moral and ethical responsibility to take the vaccine, because it's about promoting the common good. I now invite Superintendent Cromwell Henry, who is a member of the National COVID-19 Task Force, to give us the update with respect to the legislations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Pleasant good afternoon to all who are listening to this broadcast by whatever means. I will not speak today about legislation. I would follow along the trend that Mrs. Matthews has set in terms of encouraging persons to vaccinate and lend some support to the efforts of the Ministry of Health in their quest to get us to the threshold, the 70% threshold that would require us to get back to as near normal as possible. Of course, it is not the responsibility of the Ministry of Health alone. It is the responsibility of all of us. For the last 12 months, we have been guided by strict COVID-19 protocols. And these protocols have required us to wear masks in public, avoid crowds and crowded spaces, maintain physical distances, and even quarantine when we would have traveled and returned to the Federation. The protocols have caused us to change our way of life, and for some, it has impacted or affected their livelihoods. And so we look forward to the day when things can go back to normal, or as near normal as possible. The CDC has advised that COVID-19 vaccines are very effective at preventing people from getting symptomatic disease, and even more effective at preventing people from getting severe COVID-19 disease. There is a growing body of evidence that suggests that fully vaccinated people are less likely to have asymptomatic infection, and therefore potentially less likely to transmit the disease to others. I therefore want to encourage all to consider the benefits of being vaccinated and make the right choice. Do not hesitate. Vaccinate. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. We now invite Dr. Hazel Laws, our Chief Medical Officer, to present us with the Health Emergency Operation Center Situation Report.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. This afternoon, it's my job as per usual to share with you the NEOC situation report for today, Wednesday, March the 24th. The Federation would have reported a total of 44 confirmed cases of COVID-19 between last year, March, to present. I want to advise the general public that 42 of these cases have fully recovered, and at present we only have 2 active cases. They are stable and they are being monitored as we speak. The coronavirus started in China in December 2019. Between then and now, over 2.7 million persons have died globally, and over 123.9 million persons have been impacted by this disease. In the United States of America, over 543,000 persons have died, and over 29.9 million persons have been confirmed with COVID-19. In the Caribbean region, in the CARICOM member states in particular, over 124,000 persons have been impacted by way of a diagnosis of COVID-19, and over 2,000 persons have died. In terms of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, what's happening? What's the COVID-19 status here? Well, in Antigua and Barbuda, over 1,000 persons have been diagnosed with COVID, with 28 deaths. In Barbados, over 3,500. In St. Lucia, over 4,000 persons. In St. Vincent and the Grenadine, 1,700. And these islands, similar to St. Kitts and Nevis, they've been rolling out their COVID-19 vaccination program. And the first row gives you an idea as to where they are at. And so we can compare. Barbados is way ahead. They have administered at least 54,631 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. Antigua and Barbuda, 24,000, Grenada, over 9,000, St. Lucia, 19,552. Now, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we would have commenced our COVID-19 vaccination program 4.5 weeks ago, more specifically on Monday, February the 22nd. And in just this short period of time, based on the figures that just came in, we would have vaccinated, or we would have administered, a total of 8,123 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. So this is dose 1. So let me repeat, based on the figures that just came in, we would have administered 8,123 doses. We would have reached a target population, meaning 24.6% of our target population. Just this afternoon, we would have received the results of the last batch of RUSVN students who would have come into country 2 weeks ago, 2 Wednesdays ago, a total of 76 students all results returned negative, and so the students will be released this afternoon. To date, we would have tested over 11,000 persons with a positivity rate of 0.3%, because we would have only had 44 results returning as positive. And so this just confirms or underscores that 42 persons would have recovered. We have 2 active cases, 2 are in isolation, and then this just shows how many persons would have been released from quarantine between last year to present. All right, so this afternoon, again, the focus is on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine that we are rolling out, and just again to empower individuals who have not yet taken the vaccine, just to provide you some additional information. And so this vaccine once you would have taken the 2 doses of this vaccine, there is an 83% reduction in risk of your contracting COVID-19. So once you would have been vaccinated, there is a significant risk reduction in contracting COVID-19. We are given 2 doses, that's the dosing schedule we are using, 2 doses 10 weeks apart. We are administering this vaccine to all adults, those over 18. It's very effective against the emerging SARS-CoV variant that was identified in the United Kingdom, and it's with pleasure that we share with you that the side effect profile of this vaccine is favorable. And again, we want to underscore that this vaccine, in the batch or the doses we are administering, they were manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. Just Monday of this week, AstraZeneca Oxford released some information, data coming out of a phase 3 trial. One cohort of this trial took place in the Americas, whereby they analyzed data from over 32,000 participants who were primarily in the United States, some were in Peru and Chile. It's interesting to note that 20% of these participants were over the age of 65 years. Yes. So yes, this vaccine is safe in older persons over 65. And over 60% of the participants had comorbidities, meaning they were suffering from a number of chronic conditions, including diabetes, hypertension, asthma, etc. Now, the information or the data coming out of this study revealed that there is a 79% reduction in risk in getting active or symptomatic COVID infection after receiving 2 doses of this vaccine 4 weeks apart. So that's interesting to note. And then again, I want to use this opportunity to highlight that the WHO advises that if you give the 2 doses 8 to 12 weeks apart, the efficacy increases to over 80%, or in particular 83%. The data coming out of this new study showed that the vaccine is 100% effective against severe COVID and hospitalization. What does that really mean? It means that once you are fully vaccinated with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, it prevents you from getting severe COVID disease. It prevents you being admitted into the ICU and going on the ventilator, etc. So it's very safe and it's effective. And the data also showed that there is no evidence of the vaccine being associated with thromboembolic events or any rare blood clots, as highlighted 1 week ago in the European Union. And it's interesting to note that at present, at least 4 of the European countries have resumed using this vaccine: Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. Okay, so access is an issue. So let's talk about access to the COVID-19 vaccine. So at present, the Federation we have in hand, we are using our first 2 batches, which amounts to 20,000 doses. So in other words, the Ministry of Health, we are targeting the first 10,000 persons with these doses. All right, so our aim is to reach and administer the first dose of 10,000 persons by April 16th, 2021. Let me repeat, our aim, our goal, our target is to reach the first 10,000 persons within the Federation and administer the first of 2 doses of this AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. And our aim is to reach the 10,000 mark by long before April 16. Yesterday we were asked a number of questions about other shipments. And so yes, the COVAX facility, you were told that the Federation signed on to this global facility way back in October of last year. We would have paid our down payment, and we have 21,600 doses allotted to us. So that means we can cover an additional 10,800 persons within the Federation. Based on information coming out of the facility, we hope to receive 7,200 doses in March of this year, 7,200 doses in April, and 7,200 doses in May. And so between now and May, we can cover an additional 10,800 persons. So if you do the calculation, as a federation, our hope, our aim is to cover or provide coverage for 70% of our population, which is our adult population based on our last census. And so if you see the maths, we have a deficit of about 25,000 doses. And so the Ministry of Health and our cabinet, the leadership of the Federation, we are doing all we can to access these additional 25,000 doses. Access to COVID-19 vaccine is crucial to curbing the spread of the COVID-19 infections. Our aim is to reach the herd immunity threshold by June, July of this year. Yes, that's our aim. And the quicker we get there, the better it is for our health system and for the social, economic context of our federation. And so it's an all-of-society approach, and we are appealing to everyone in the federation. We want to thank those who have already come on board and said yes and consented to taking their first dose. And so we are reaching out to the others in terms of empowering yourself with the information, and we are asking you to make an informed decision, come on board, and help us attain this goal of reaching our herd immunity threshold. Why is this so important? Because if we are successful in vaccinating 70% of our population, it means the adult population will be circulating in our federation with that natural immunity against the virus. And so if we were to accept inbound passengers by air, by sea, the risk of clusters developing will be much reduced. The risk of our going into community transmission will be considerably reduced, because the herd immunity provides indirect protection to the vulnerable and to those who cannot be vaccinated. And so that's why we are imploring our people to come on board. The CARICOM member states, they are comparing themselves. This is circulating. I think it says 6 from the bottom. So we need to really get up and vaccinate. Get the facts, choose the vaccination. It's our best shot at protecting ourselves, protecting our families, protecting our community, and rebuilding our economy. I was told yesterday that individuals or persons are not seeing the link between taking the vaccine and opening up the resurgence in the economy that we are speaking about. So let me try and break this down. All right, so if each of you say yes and consent to taking the vaccine, we would reach our herd immunity threshold. And when we do, all of us who would be vaccinated would provide indirect protection to our children who cannot receive the vaccine and to the few adults who have other serious illnesses like cancer who can't take the vaccine. And so if we were to achieve this goal, then we'll be able to relax our health and travel protocols. What does that mean? Then we can shorten the quarantine period from 2 weeks to maybe a few days, or who knows, no quarantine at all. Then in so doing, you would see an increase in the number of visitor arrivals by air and probably by sea, because we hear that the cruise industry is going to start soon. More money will be circulating in the economy. And so those persons who have started businesses at home, you will see an increase in the number of patrons, and more money will be circulating in all the subsectors of our society. Get the facts, choose the vax. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws, for that comprehensive presentation. Before we move on to our next presenter, I wanted to say this. The vaccine and taking the vaccine has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with whether you are a supporter of the People's Labour Party. It has nothing to do with whether you're a supporter of the Labour Party. It has nothing to do with whether you're a supporter of the PAM party. It is not a partisan political issue. The only politics with vaccination is the politics of the common good, the politics of economic recovery, the politics of personal health, the politics of your family's health, the politics of your children going to school, the politics of us recovering in general. That is the only politics that the vaccination is all about. It has nothing to do with partisan politics. So I think it's important that people understand that. It's not a political issue in that sense. I want to invite Mr. Abdias Samuel, Chair of the National COVID-19 Task Force and National Disaster Coordinator at NEMA, to give us his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, and good afternoon to all listeners and viewers joining us by various means. I want to thank the presenters before me. Mr. Williams, just like some of the presenters who have gone before me, I did not prepare a comprehensive presentation. The reason being, Mr. Williams, is that I want to share with the general public some timeline of events that would have occurred since 2020. The president of the chamber, Ms. Matthews, would have indicated that it's almost a year, but it's longer than a year. And on the 23rd of March, we would have issued our first travel advisory against the China, Iran, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, the EU, Switzerland, UK, and by extension, the US, United States of America, French and Dutch territories in the Caribbean. And we began our screening process and mandatory 14-day quarantine. On the 25th of March, that would be tomorrow, we would have detected our first 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19 on St. Kitts and Nevis. Equally so, on the 25th, the Honorable Prime Minister would have announced that our borders were going to close on the 25th, effective 11:59 p.m. And that was to commercial flights and only emergency flights and cargo flights would have been allowed into the Federation. By the 31st of March, a week from today, St. Kitts and Nevis in 2020 would have gone into a full lockdown. It was not until August the 24th where on August the 29th, where the restrictions were lifted on curfews. So therefore, the country would have opened up. During that time, we were dealing a lot with misinformation, and we began our risk communication strategy. It was implemented, whereby we had daily briefings. Every day, we were here from Saturday to Saturday, Sunday to Sunday. And we saw eventually the impact it had in dealing with the misinformation. Every day, I say this to say, every week, our health professionals, our other members of the National COVID-19 Task Force, other members of our society, use this platform to bring information to you. This information is also used by the media houses to create news items. So therefore, there's a lot of information that is being shared via these platforms. There's no lack of information. One of the things I have seen is that the misinformation or the gossip or the bad news is shared quicker than the good news. You hardly see anybody sharing the good news of the good things that are happening or the advancements that we are making, the fact that we only have 2 active cases, and out of 4,000 plus visitors that have entered into our federation, we have only had 44 cases with 42 recovered and 2 active, and I'm certain they are recovering nicely. No deaths, no death, no serious hospitalization. Yet this is being used, the success is being used basically to taunt that, why should I vaccinate? And I want to use the linkages. We have the COVID-19 Prevention and Control Act, or the bill, and that is basically being used for, to manage the present pandemic that we are dealing with. Now, what will be the benefits to persons outside the tourism sector? Because that is a discussion that is being had. Only the tourism sector, only the tourism sector. It's not only the tourism sector, it's all of society. Now, look at what's happening to the sporting community. The sporting community has a lot of restrictions. We see the Football Association having a lot of restrictions. They have international matches. They have a lot of things that has to be restricted, and that's worldwide. Look at the NBA. Look at the football leagues in Europe. Everything has restrictions. Let us look at our basic life. Even domestic travel, international travels, they have restrictions. If we want to go further, let's take a look at the entertainment sector. We have promoters. We have these persons who host these events as a means of income for them. And these individuals are basically now having challenges because they have many restrictions. Let's take a look at the churches. The churches have many restrictions on them. Look at weddings, look at funerals. Just last week in Jamaica, you would have seen that Jamaica suspended funerals for 2 weeks because of the treacherous situation that is happening in Jamaica. That's the reality. So we have to make a personal choice. We have been receiving complaints, as I shared with a group today, of persons saying incentives is blackmail. Incentives should not be interpreted as blackmail. Incentives is for persons to be able to feel encouraged to go and accept the vaccine. Yes, it's a personal decision. Now, here's the other question. If we are going to slowly take St. Kitts and Nevis into a slow socio-economic suicide by us not following the guidance of the science, having the treatment to overcome the pandemic and not vaccinate, then that's going to have to be a responsibility that you will have to take and not put the blame on government or any ministries, departments, or anyone else but your own selves. So therefore, you have seen that 90% of the doctors would have gone and accepted the vaccine. You have seen that persons within the business sector, I mean, I was amazed today in a meeting I attended with tourism stakeholders, that the majority of persons in the tourism sector are the ones taking the vaccines. And the outcry is that the ordinary man and woman do not want to accept the vaccine because they are waiting. The CMO has stated the challenge with access to vaccines. So we have for 10,000, we need to reach to 33,000. We get the next batches of vaccines. If access becomes a challenge, then what? Where will you be counted? And that is something that you, the general public, have to make that personal decision and decide. Because the reality is, as stated by the Minister of Tourism today in this meeting, at some point in time, the ship industry is going to decide that unless your country is vaccinated and they can provide the protection for our passengers, our customers, then we will not come to your port. This will not be the responsibility of a government. This will have to be the personal responsibility of every individual who refuse to accept the vaccination process. And that's the true reality. This don't require for us to do any presentation or, we've been talking for long enough. And all we're asking the general public is to continue to follow us just like you did in the beginning. In the beginning when we went into the lockdown, the country followed. We went together as a nation. Coming out of the lockdown, we came out together and we have been doing well. We reached the level now where we have the treatment to get us out of the pandemic. And now we are saying, no, we don't want to get out. Let us stay in this chokehold whereby eventually we are going to have a strong socio-economic impact. Let me just share with you some of the data that was frightening to us here at the National COVID-19 Task Force. The increase in domestic violence that was reported by the police during the times of lockdowns was significant. The impact on the mental health of our elders during the lockdowns was significant, extremely significant. And if we want to carry ourselves to that particular stage as a country, then you have to accept that responsibility, not the National COVID-19 Task Force, not the health professionals, not the government or anybody else, but your own selves. So therefore, St. Kitts and Nevis, I am appealing to you. I'm making this personal appeal. We see the business sector is coming on board. We have reached out to the religious leaders. They are helping. We're reaching out to all of civic society, fraternal associations. We are working in the communities. We are actually bringing the vaccines to your workplace. We're bringing it to your community. You see Dr. Wilkinson every minute. I have never seen him so much at town hall meetings in communities. So if you didn't know him then, you know him now. We have seen the health doctors and others going around and doing all these sessions, just like we did when we were going down into the lockdowns. We see what the impact of following the guidance of the science can do to us. While our state is good, it's not good enough as yet. We are appealing also. Mr. Williams said it's not a political thing, but we have to reach the influencers in the community. And I am appealing to all political parties in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis to encourage their supporters, to encourage their people to support the science and teach them of the importance of vaccination. It's critical. And in this vein, We have sent out, the National COVID-19 Task Force has made an appeal and sent an invitation to all the political parties. And we are hopeful that next week we can have a fruitful discussion on the way forward, because we have been consulting with a number of international consultants to develop a roadmap to recovery. And this roadmap to recovery must be inclusive of every single society, every single member of St. Kitts and Nevis, all of society approach. Ladies and gentlemen, all I am asking you, be counted. Be counted in the numbers that we have right now. 10,000, we reach 8,000, be counted in the first 10,000. Be counted in the second 10,000, the batch of 10,000. Be counted in the last batch. At the end of the day, we will see the results. Bermuda and the Cayman Islands, they are 50%. Countries like Israel as well already at 60%. Once we reach a 70%, I want to rest. My colleagues want to rest. Until we reach it, we will not rest. We're going to reach and walk through every single byways and walkways in each community in St. Kitts and in Nevis. We saw the other day what a breach can do at a particular hotel in Nevis. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not go into community outbreak. That is not what we want. We don't want to go into any community spread. If we go into any community spread, we are extending the timeline for us to recover. We targeted early summer for us to be able to vaccinate everyone and reach that threshold. It means that persons who were intending to have some particular income for the next tourist season, this can be jeopardized. Persons who were thinking that there could be the potential to now be free to go to church like before, that can be jeopardized. Carnival, that can be jeopardized. One of the #1 leading economies in OECS can be jeopardized. Our economic and social well-being can be extremely jeopardized. Ladies and gentlemen, be counted, vaccinate, please stop hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. You know, sometimes the way it is being put across is that when we reach 70%, we stop vaccinating. I don't think that that is the case. 70%, I think, is the minimum level. And even if after we reach 70%, you want to move beyond 70% and people to continue to receive the vaccination. We have come to the question and answer segment. I have 2 questions. I think this one has been treated in other press conferences, but nonetheless, I will ask it for emphasis. Will there be any other type of vaccine purchase for the country, like the Johnson & Johnson or any from Cuba? Because this person is saying that they're afraid to take the 2 shots. I don't know. And the other question is the travel advisory being for the 3 countries that have variants, South Africa, Brazil, and the UK. However, the question is that the variants have already spread to other countries, like the US and other places, and there is no travel advisory against those countries.
For now, the Federation has access to the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and so that's the one that we are rolling out. But let me just back up by saying that the Federation, we will only roll out or offer a vaccine if it has been approved by the World Health Organization. So at present, you have the Pfizer-BioNTech being approved by WHO, the AstraZeneca Oxford, manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, and the AstraZeneca manufactured in South Korea. That's AstraZeneca SK Bioscience. And then you have the Johnson & Johnson that was approved recently by the World Health Organization. Now, as a federation, I'm not aware that we have access to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as yet. And so if we do, it would be a time period between now and then. However, I won't recommend that you wait until then. We have AstraZeneca Oxford vaccines in hand. You have the opportunity in hand. Let us capitalize on it and use it. Let me share something personally. Last night I received a call from Kingston, Jamaica. This is a local living in Jamaica and saying, Hazel, you have vaccines, just sit in. We are Kititians, we live in another country. How can you get vaccines from Bastia St. Kitts to us in Jamaica? Because we need it. We understand the urgency and that we want the vaccine. Now these are Kititians, Nevisians living in other jurisdictions, trying to figure out how we can get vaccines to them. And so we are, see, you have a wonderful opportunity here on the ground. I don't want to get personal. My daughter, she lives in another country. She's not in the medical field. She's not in the priority group to be vaccinated in that country. Mommy, how can I get a vaccine? But there are persons on the ground, we are offering you the vaccine, and you are waiting. Waiting for what?
The second question with the travel advisory. I think a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet, but the issue really, I don't think the issue so much is which vaccine or which brand of vaccine. It's just the sort of vaccine hesitancy and people bringing up all kind of excuse and that sort of a thing. And that is just plain and simple. Because, for example, the lead infectious disease specialist in the United States, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has said it doesn't matter which one of the vaccines that you take. In fact, he was asked in an interview, if you had a choice, which vaccine would you take? And he said, the one that is readily available to me, I will take it. That is what Dr. Anthony Fauci said. The one that is readily available to me, I will take. I do not have a preference. And this is the lead infectious disease person, probably one of the world's best, Dr. Anthony Fauci, responding to a question like that in an interview. A rose by any other name would be just as sweet. Mm-hmm.
Regarding the question on the variants, so we have a travel advisory against travelers coming from the United Kingdom, South Africa, and Brazil, because internationally we are monitoring 3 emerging SARS-CoV-2 variants, one identified in the United Kingdom, South Africa, Brazil. And so, by extension, the prevalence of these variants is highest in the United Kingdom, Brazil, South Africa. Thus, the rationale for the travel advisory. So let me break it down. We are following up the science behind these variants. And so the UK variant is 50% more transmissible. So in other words, it can easily overwhelm our health system if it gets here. And it's associated with more severe COVID disease. The South African variant is also more transmissible. That one is associated with a higher risk of reinfectivity. So you get the first, you come down with COVID, and then you can get COVID again and again with the South African variant. And the Brazil variant is associated with increased transmissibility. The bottom line is our small federation We won't do well if either of these three variants get away here. And so our aim is to keep the three variants away from the Federation for as long as possible. And so that's the rationale.
Thank you very much, Dr. Laws, and that brings us to the end of our press briefing for today. We thank you very much for tuning in today and joining us for this press briefing. We thank everyone who participated in today's press briefing, the President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Mrs. Giselle Matthews, Superintendent Cromwell Henry, our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hazel Laws, Dr. Cameron Wilkinson, our Medical Chief of Staff, who has been doing a wonderful job in going around to the various town halls and educating the people on the importance of taking the vaccine. The Honorable Wendy Phipps, Mr. Abdius Samuel, Mrs. Christmas Jacobs, we never forget you, and the media, because the media plays an important part in terms of the management of the pandemic and the dissemination of information that is accurate and timely and so on. I see AJ behind you wanting recognition, Mr. AJ, and of course John James and Vesta Southwell, who has been integral part of the communication strategy here at the NEOC. Thank you to all of you, and next Wednesday we will be back with another press briefing. Until then, continue to maintain the protocols, adhere to them, and of course, go out and get vaccinated. I am Les Roy Williams. See you next week.
Is on.